My mother-in-law compared my imperfect pregnancy to my sister-in-law's perfect pregnancy. Throughout the 9 months after the birth of the child, my sister-in-law and my husband stopped communicating with my mother-in-law. My husband and I have been married for more than 2 years and have been together for 7. He is literally the man of my dreams and we have a wonderful life. My parents and my whole family adore him. I am Mexican and I have a very large family. Fortunately, I have never heard anyone in my family say that they do not like him. He is a true gentleman and that is what made me fall in love with him from the very beginning. We are the perfect couple and rarely argue, except in cases related to his mother. My mother-in-law is simply a nightmare, to put it mildly. My husband's family is smaller compared to mine. Besides his parents, he has a sister who got married last year. His parents are conservative Christians from a small town, and his mother is so overbearing that it crosses all boundaries. She loves to control everything and insists that the family gathers together on holidays. If we do not obey her demands, she starts making scenes. When I first met my husband's family, I immediately got along well with his father. He was calm and kind. My husband's sister, who used to study in college in another state and returned home only 2 years ago, treats me like her own sister. But with his mother, it was not easy because she said incredibly sexist things to me. For example, when they asked what I do for work, I said I am a marine biologist and work on the conservation of marine flora and fauna. My father-in-law said that it was wonderful and looked really pleased, but my mother-in-law frowned and did not say a word. I ignored it, not attaching any importance to it, but later my father-in-law called my husband and said that his mother wanted him to break off the relationship with me. According to my father-in-law, she said that I was not good enough for her son. Her argument was that I did not behave the way a woman should because I have a job, that I love my job and love being a scientist. My husband never said he wanted me to be a housewife or choose a stereotypically female profession. If he wanted that, we would not be together, but according to his mother, that is exactly what he needs. She complained that with my well-paying job, I might not become a housewife after marriage, and he should have found a better woman. My husband firmly told my father-in-law to tell his wife that who he chose to marry was none of her business. I was pleased that my husband stood up for me. It was a signal for me that I made the right choice, and that is why I did not leave the relationship after I learned that his mother thought about me that way. Unfortunately, the more serious our relationship became, the worse my mother-in-law treated me, despite all my husband's efforts to protect me. At first, there were caustic remarks when we were alone. She managed to insert her thoughts into the conversations about what, in her opinion, a good wife should be, a housewife, taking care of the house and waiting for her husband from work. She also several times told me that I did not look like the woman her son should have brought into the house because I was not feminine enough to have children. At first, I did not take her words seriously, thinking she was joking, but when she started repeating this again and again, I realized she was serious, and I was shocked by her mindset. One day, when we came for dinner after her insistent invitation, she began to talk about how much she missed the times when women were exclusively involved in the family and men provided for them. My husband wittily remarked that the world had long changed and that he was lucky to have such a partner as me because we both earn well and together do the housework. My mother-in-law shook her head disapprovingly upon hearing this and began to say that women should behave like women and men like men. I realized she was moderately talking about this, but I tried to stay calm. My father-in-law asked her to calm down and noted that this was not the case to discuss such things, but it angered her because he did not support her. She continued to insist that she was telling the truth and just wanted the best for her son, after which she looked intently at me. I had heard enough from her, so I quietly got up from the table and asked my husband to take me home. He readily agreed, looking disappointedly at his mother, and we left. Later, my father-in-law called to smooth things over, but I firmly said that his mother should not decide whom her son marries and that it was time for her to stop mocking my work. My father-in-law agreed and apologized for her behavior, but I did not accept their apologies. My husband also stated that if his mother did not apologize herself, he would no longer visit her. Perhaps she was frightened by the threat and she apologized to me. I asked her not to bring up this topic again, and she agreed. Although I managed to let go of this situation, unfortunately, it is not so easy for snakes to change their skin. Just a few months later, when we had just started living together before the wedding, I needed to go on a research expedition for a few weeks. She found out about this and called me, asking who would take care of the house and her son in my absence. I was puzzled by her question and put her on speakerphone so my husband, who was driving at the time, could also hear. I asked her what she meant, and she began to say that since I now live with her son, it was time for me to stop behaving so childishly. She continued to insist that I should not go on these expeditions and should try harder to be a good housewife for her son. My husband got angry and answered that he is self-sufficient and we do not need anyone to take care of him because we are equal partners who share responsibilities. This upset her, and she stated that we cannot get married because I do not know how to be the right wife. My husband asked her not to meddle in their affairs and ended the conversation. When my husband proposed to me, my mother-in-law was extremely displeased, and it angered her even more that we planned a small wedding. I have a huge family, and it would have been too expensive to invite everyone since we were also planning to move into our own home. Therefore, I decided to invite only close relatives and later celebrate with other family members. But my mother-in-law began to argue with my husband, insisting that she wanted to invite all her friends whom she had not seen for a long time and that our wedding was the perfect occasion for this. When my husband asked her if she would pay for the food for her guests if we agreed to invite them, she took offense and said that he should be ashamed to ask such a question because we both earn well. We just smiled that we had already decided to have a small wedding, and if she invited unwanted guests, she would have to pay for their food herself. My mother-in-law did not like this, but she could do nothing about it. During the wedding, she loudly complained about everything and made it clear that she hated my wedding dress. I ignored her comments and pretended she did not exist because on that day I did not want to be upset by her biting words. My sister-in-law tried to protect me with all her might, trying to keep my mother-in-law away from me until the end of the evening. Last year, in mid-April, we learned that I was pregnant. It was wonderful news for us because we had been trying for a long time. We decided to wait until the 9th week to tell close friends and relatives. My mother-in-law was extremely upset that she was not the first to know. She called me to claim that as the mother of my husband, she had every right to be the first to know and expressed her disappointment with me. I answered that we wanted to wait with such an important announcement, and if she wanted to complain, she could call my husband because I was not in the mood for her lecture on what a good woman should be. Just a month after I announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law told us that she was also pregnant. We were shocked but happy about this news because it meant there would be another baby in our family. My sister-in-law was not married yet, but she had a boyfriend with whom she had been together for a long time. I knew my mother-in-law would make a huge problem out of this because of her prejudices about pregnancy before marriage, and as expected, she did, but my husband supported his sister, and in the end, my mother-in-law accepted the situation. My father-in-law was very touched and happy that he would have 2 grandchildren at once. My sister-in-law and I began to spend more time together because we were both going through this unique period of pregnancy. We supported each other, shared advice, bought things for the babies together, and set up rooms for them. During this period, my mother-in-law began to constantly compare my pregnancy to my sister-in-law's pregnancy as if it were a competition. She said that my sister-in-law was clearly better prepared for motherhood because she had always been a housewife, unlike me. She made cutting remarks. For example, if I complained more often about toxicosis and she found out about it, she would say that my sister-in-law did not have such a thing, which means her body is better suited for bearing a child. Although I tried to ignore her remarks, they still hurt me, and my sister-in-law did not like it either. When the time came for the party where we were supposed to find out the gender of the baby, I asked my sister-in-law to find out the gender of our baby from the doctor and prepare an envelope. I did the same for her party. My mother-in-law was furious when she found out about this and threw a fit. She came to our house, screaming that I was trying to take her grandson away from her by not letting her organize this event, and that my husband should put me in my place so she could participate more in my pregnancy. My husband did not like her tone, and since I started having a headache, he told her to leave or she would be completely cut off from the life of our child. As usual, she made a scene, sobbing and insisting that she just wanted the best for her grandson, but in the end, she left. Later, we received calls from my father-in-law and sister-in-law, who were concerned about her behavior, and we had to tell them what happened. My sister-in-law was shocked by her mother's actions and asked me to rest as much as possible since I was very upset after her screams on Christmas. My husband told his mother that we would not come because I could not travel long distances. She was furious, claiming that he was trying to distance himself from his family. When he refused to listen to her, she hung up. We thought she understood and would not bother us anymore. To our surprise, a week later, she texted him, demanding that we come to her exactly at 4 p.m. My husband reminded her of the previous conversation in which he clearly stated that we would not come. Then she called and started yelling that he had no right to avoid communicating with his family by acting that way. Then she asked if I was the one who was dissuading him. He answered that it was our joint decision, and she started yelling again that he should control his woman. I began to realize more and more clearly how controlling and toxic my mother-in-law was becoming. I shared my concerns with my husband and sister-in-law, and both agreed that she was clearly overstepping the boundaries and promised to protect me. But everyone agreed that their mother had already annoyed everyone. When the time came for the birth, we did not have time to warn anyone because I went into premature labor at 33 weeks, and our son was born at 34 weeks by emergency cesarean section. After my husband made sure that everything was in order with me and the child, he announced the birth of our son in the family chat, as well as told my family. Everyone was happy and congratulated, but my mother-in-law again threw a fit because she was not warned that I was giving birth. She bombarded us with messages, claiming that she should have been in the delivery room with me to see her grandson come into the world. This was absolutely absurd because I would never have let her in there. I did not answer her to refute her delusional ideas because I was busy with the child. When we announced the name of our son, she called my husband in tears, complaining that the name sounded too Mexican and that we should choose another one. When my husband said that he liked the name of our son, she suggested leaving it as a middle name and choosing something else for the first. Obviously, we did not listen to her, and she continued to be indignant. When it was time for her to meet her grandson, she insisted on calling him a completely different name, which surprised us a lot. She tried to justify herself by saying that it would be her special name for him. But my husband firmly demanded that she stop. It also annoyed her that I was breastfeeding my son because it meant that I would have to take him away from her. She insisted that I should switch him to formula so she could spend more time with him. My mom, who was nearby, explained to her that newborns need breast milk, but my mother-in-law continued to argue, claiming that it was not fair. As you can imagine, her mockery and attempts to control everything were becoming more and more unbearable and obvious to everyone. The last straw came when she invited me to lunch, saying she wanted to discuss something important. I tried several times to cancel the meeting, but she begged me to come, claiming it was extremely necessary. When I finally came, she greeted me warmly, and we sat down to order food. I asked her why she wanted to meet, and at that moment my mother-in-law asked if I had thought about who would be the godmother of our son. Hearing this, I pressed my lips together because I knew the answer would not satisfy her. I calmly explained that my sister-in-law and I had discussed this issue and decided that we would be the godmothers of each other's children. My mother-in-law burst into tears in the middle of the restaurant, screaming how could I do this to her. She claimed that my sister-in-law has her own family, and I should make her the godmother of our son because she has every right to take care of him as a grandmother. I reminded her that she herself considered my sister-in-law a more suitable mother, so she should be pleased that her son would be under her care. But my mother-in-law began to insist that only she could be trusted and insisted that she should be the godmother. Her absurd demands began to annoy me, and I firmly said that the discussion was over and if she wanted, she could talk about it with my husband. Later, I told my sister-in-law about our conversation, and she also did not like it. My husband also did not understand why my mother-in-law was behaving this way and began to ignore her calls. Last week, my sister-in-law gave birth to a daughter. She asked me to be with her in the delivery room because I had already been through this. I gladly agreed and spent the whole night with her while my husband and my mom took care of our son at home. In the morning, after my sister-in-law gave birth and I made sure her boyfriend was there, I went home to rest. During the day, I received several calls from my mother-in-law, but I was too tired to talk to her and spent time with my son. In the evening, my husband, who had gone to visit his sister, came home in a good mood. I thought he was happy about meeting his niece, but he said he was happier for another reason. That was when he told me that my sister-in-law, tired of her mother's toxic behavior, decided to take a hard line and completely ban her from communicating with her daughter. He explained that when my mother-in-law unexpectedly appeared at the hospital, my sister-in-law asked the nurses not to let her in. The only one allowed to see the child was my father-in-law because my sister-in-law did not want her mother to judge her daughter. This was a shock and a complete surprise because I could never have imagined that my sister-in-law would be able to stand up to her mother so firmly. It also helped me understand why my mother-in-law had been calling me all day. Perhaps she was trying either to blame me or to convince me to influence my sister-in-law to let her see her granddaughter. When I later spoke with my sister-in-law, she explained that her decision was the result of observing how my mother-in-law had treated me over the years. The complete cessation of communication became a necessary boundary to protect her daughter from the toxic influence of my mother-in-law. This was a moment of reckoning for my mother-in-law when the consequences of her actions finally caught up with her. The consequences were serious. My mother-in-law is now completely cut off from her daughter's life and is deprived of the opportunity to see the important moments of her granddaughter's early childhood. Since then, I have begun to think about whether we should also completely stop communicating with my mother-in-law. Would that be too cruel? So, I suggest you answer the author's question right now in the comments, and we will move on to the update. Update 1. Hello everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for your kind words and advice. This means a lot to me. So, my husband and I have not communicated with my mother-in-law since my sister-in-law gave birth. My mother-in-law continues to call us, but we ignore her attempts. I discussed my thoughts with my husband, and we came to an agreement that for our peace of mind, it would be better to completely exclude her from our lives because there is no guarantee that she will not behave the same way with our son. For those who ask why we waited so long, I will explain. My husband is the eldest child in the family and grew up in this toxic environment, so he never realized how wrong it all was until his mother started treating me badly. My husband has always supported and protected me, but his mother is a difficult case. So we organized a video call with his sister and father to discuss our decision, and they supported us. Now we just have to inform my mother-in-law about this. Update 2. Yesterday evening, my husband decided to call his mother to inform her of our decision. As soon as she answered, she began to scream about how long he had not talked to her and that she wanted to see our son immediately. My husband was silent until she finished her demands, and then calmly said that she was right, he really needed to show more determination. My mother-in-law immediately agreed, saying that this is exactly what she had been asking from him. But my husband interrupted her, stating that as the head of our family, he decided to completely exclude her from our lives to protect us from her toxic behavior and constant drama. My mother-in-law was stunned, trying to comprehend what she had heard. When she realized the seriousness of our decision, she began to say that she would come to us anyway and nothing could stop her from seeing her grandson. My husband immediately warned her that we would not let her in and would call the police for illegal entry. She began to scream that it was probably my decision and that I was destroying their family. My husband answered that she could think what she wanted, but he had said all he had to say. She continued to scream that it was precisely because of this that he should not have married a woman like me and that she had always known that I would bring problems. My husband, naturally, got angry and reminded her that we are not the only ones who have stopped communicating with her, and her own daughter has done the same. He said that the problem is clearly with her and that it is time for her to accept it. My mother-in-law, as always, began to claim that I had poisoned everyone's minds and had successfully taken her children away from her. My husband, tired of her words, said that if she wanted to blame anyone, she should blame herself for her bitterness. He added that she had annoyed everyone and needed to come to terms with the consequences of her actions. This made her silent, and he blocked her. After the conversation, I did the same. I also warned my family about the situation and asked them not to answer calls from my mother-in-law. At the moment, I feel sorry for my husband and my sister-in-law because they do not have a supportive mother, but I am glad that I will never have to deal with this woman again. Update 3. It has been 2 months since my last update, and I am happy to report that our son is doing well. My sister-in-law and I continue to maintain close relationships and meet regularly so that our children can play together. It is so nice to watch them bond with each other, and I hope they will become best friends when they grow up. Another joyful news is that my sister-in-law is finally getting married to the father of her child, as we expected. Now, to the main point, we still do not communicate with my mother-in-law. To everyone who was worried about our safety, I can say, don't worry. We have cameras installed throughout the house, and we have changed the locks so my mother-in-law cannot disturb us. I doubt she will dare to confront us publicly because now many people know why we stopped communicating with her. She should be very ashamed after we completely broke off contact. She tried to convince my father-in-law to talk to us, but he refused and told her that he was also tired of her. I think when her own husband told her this, she might finally have thought about it. A few weeks later, she asked my sister-in-law to pass on to us that she was sorry for everything she had done to me. I doubt the sincerity of her apologies, and therefore we still do not communicate with her. Well, be sure to write in the comments what you think about this whole story. Personally, I do not fully understand why her own daughter broke off the relationship with her mother because, in essence, the mother did not really do anything to her. But at least there is nothing about it in the story. Of course, I understand that she could have looked at her brother and how her mother treats him and based on that, made such a decision. Understand that the mother, on his example, behaves absolutely inappropriately and always has. But still, is this the real reason? I do not know. Write your opinion. Also, watch our previous video, which you will see here, and good luck.